democracy.
Thank you, Eli, for that warm introduction. It's very difficult. I don't think Eli mentioned I'm the feature speaker. After listening to MP Charles, I think that was the feature speak. It's very difficult. It's very, very difficult to come after MP Rodney Charles. I mean, we did a press conference yesterday and Sunday, and I spoke after Rodney. And again tonight, I'm speaking after Rodney. And Rodney took everything I wanted to say here tonight. So I really don't know what else is left to say. But I listened to Rodney, and he says he's a professor now, he's a prophet, and he's everything here tonight. So Rodney, fantastic speech here tonight. I want to say good night to our political leader. The viewers out there in the World Wide Web, as Dr. Munilal, who has joined us here tonight, always says, and there's so many people in the hall here tonight. I welcome them tonight on our Monday night virtual. Tonight I join our virtual report to tell the country that yet again the Prime Minister and his government of this country have shortchanged and politically misled this country on energy matters. Yesterday, we had a press conference, the opposition, Rodney Charles and myself, and we called on answers. We called for answers from the Prime Minister on his recent trip. I think the Prime Minister returned from 1 week in Europe. I think he started off in Switzerland, he went to Germany, then he went to the United Kingdom, and ended up in Hague, and then he returned, I'm hopefully sometime yesterday. And we saw that the government put out an advertisement that the Prime Minister is holding a press conference this morning at 9:30. So I think the whole entire opposition and the country, we were waiting to hear on the goodies, on the good things that the Prime Minister should have mentioned in his speech, in his conference this morning. Because after 1 week in Europe and meeting all these big players, we thought we would have heard a lot of stuff coming out of the Prime Minister. And I think we're still waiting as we speak here tonight on anything tangible that came out of the Prime Minister's mouth this morning. I think the country is yet to hear anything of tangibility that came out from that trip for the last 7 days. And the Prime Minister in his speech this morning wants to accuse us, the UNC, of causing mischief. But I want to say the opposition is not causing any mischief, Prime Minister. We are simply calling on accountability on you and your government on what in our energy sector. Just like the President today in our ceremonial opening, the President mentioned that the government of the day has to account to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And we are calling on the Prime Minister once again to account to the people of Trinidad and Tobago for the last 7 days on that energy trip in Europe. The Prime Minister lack of achievements on his last trip is a hardcore proof that this country's energy sector has lost all appeal to the international energy community. Tonight, I want to ask again to the Prime Minister, what is in place after your Europe visits to increase oil and gas production? Today, we thought the Prime Minister would have announced to the people of this nation that the foreign companies that he visited were investing millions of dollars in our country. We are yet to hear anything tangible. Not a single new investment. All he talked about was plant maintenance, which is a normal part of plants in Trinidad and Tobago in the Point Lisas industry. Today, we thought the Prime Minister would have announced that he has generated new investment, like Proman that he visited in Switzerland, would be building a new plant in Point Lisas. Nothing ever mentioned here this morning. Today, we thought the Prime Minister would have told the country that we will be getting more oil and gas. Not a single new barrel was mentioned. The government wants to fool the people, fool the country. They want to mama-guy citizens into thinking the Prime Minister is out there growing the energy sector internationally. They wanted to paint a picture of growth right before the budget on September 26, because they simply have nothing to account for. Now we are hearing a new word. We're hearing a new word used by the Prime Minister. He went out there to position Trinidad and Tobago in the energy sector. Really, Prime Minister, after 100 years in the energy sector, we are doing business for the past 100 years. You are now telling the country you went out there to position Trinidad and Tobago in the energy sector. And I leave it right there. I want the country to be aware. This trip was just a distraction ahead of a budget to hide the grim reality facing our energy sector, where they see the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago Economic Bulletin confirmed on Friday that everything is falling apart. They expect you to be fooled by a few pictures in a boardroom when the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago has told us that the energy sector has declined by 5.1% in the first quarter of 2022. They are boasting about a 7-year high with Shell after their meetings, yet this central bank report tells us that gas production is down by 3.1% for the first quarter of 2022. And oil production is down by 2.6%. They are boasting about meeting Proman, yet the central bank report tells us ammonia production was down by 22.9% and methanol down by 11%. Trinidad and Tobago must not fall for their gimmicks that these oil companies have agreed to invest more. The oil companies are simply maintaining their plans at Point Lisas. There has been no new investments announced by the Prime Minister. This trip was nothing but a cover-up to hide that this government has caused this country to lose billions in revenue had Point Lisas not fallen apart due to the poor gas negotiations back in Houston. Today would have been making billions for the country. This morning, the Prime Minister told the nation he went to meet the decision makers. Tonight, I asked the Prime Minister, why aren't those decision makers coming to Trinidad? They used to come to Trinidad when Kamala Persad-Bissessar was the Prime Minister. So why are they not coming anymore? The reality is that the Prime Minister and Stuart Young have gone to beg these energy companies who are simply losing interest in Trinidad and Tobago as our energy sector becomes unattractive under this present government. This country has been an energy powerhouse for years, and it has been the executives of these companies that used to come to us looking for good investments. Ask yourself, why we have to now go to them? Simply because we have lost the incentives and attractive environment that under the Kamala Persad-Bissessar we had. In 2015, Shell CEO, Mr. Ben Van Buren, visited Kamala Persad-Bissessar at the Prime Minister's residence. The oil companies came to our government because our government and our energy sector then offered them hope. It is no secret why Prime Minister Rowley and Energy Minister Stuart Young have had to go to London to beg for energy investments. The reality is that after 7 years, this government has not offered a single incentive that could lead to increased new investments in our energy sector. And I want to remind the country here tonight, this government that is in place has been leading our energy sector since September 2015 to now. We're in September 2022. That's approximately 7 years. And they had 3 energy ministers. They started off back in September 2015 with Nikon Oliveri, the MP for Labre. She lasted 1 year. Then the late Franklin Kahn, he took over, and he lasted a few years until his passing. And now we have Stuart Young as the 3rd Minister of Energy. And I want to also remind the country, during those past 7 years, what they have done, and they have destroyed our energy sector. They shut down Petrotrin and the refinery. They negotiated badly in Houston, that has that bad gas negotiation that have our Point Lisa plants for the most closure in the past 7 years. They failed to incentivize the energy sector, and they failed in their shallow and bid rounds that they have put forward in the last 7 years. So they have not been successful in the past 7 years. And now you hear the Prime Minister on his last trip talking about positioning our energy sector. Ladies and gentlemen, viewers out there, things are bad in our energy sector. Tonight we are calling on the Prime Minister to tell the nation what has happened with Atlantic LNG. Because on his trip last week, he mentioned when he met with BP and Shell, they were discussing restructuring Atlantic LNG. In January 2022 this year, when the Minister of Energy, Stuart Young, announced that shareholders such as BP and Shell, as well as NGC, had signed a heads of agreement for the restructuring of Atlantic LNG. They committed that those negotiations would be completed in June 2022. We are ending September 2022, and we are asking, what is the delay in the negotiations? I understand the Prime Minister in one of his addresses said that it is coming soon. And we are saying the movie industry is a dead business. There are no more coming attractions, Prime Minister. Tell us the truth about those negotiations of restructuring Atlantic LNG. You all will remember Atlantic Train 1. This government wasted over $300 million in trying to save or restructure Train 1 in Atlantic LNG. In 2 weeks' time, the budget will be read, September 26. Today in the opposition, we are calling for the end of 7 years of misleading the country in our energy figures. Every single budget since 2015, the Minister of Finance has been wrong on his production figures. Today we say to the Minister of Finance, stop giving the country false figures. Last budget, he predicted 76,000 barrels of oil for 2022. We are at 59,000 barrels. Last budget, he predicted 3.2 billion of standard cubic feet of gas. Today, we are struggling at 2.5 billion standard cubic feet of gas. In 2018, he predicted that for the period 2019 to 2021, production of crude is expected to rise to 77,000 barrels. In 2018, he predicted the gas production would return to 4.1 billion standard cubic feet of gas. He has never come close to any of these figures. And what do I mean? What we have said time and time again, that Minister Imbert brings a budget of false hope for this country. And we are asking on all the chambers, all the business chambers, all the accounting firms, when the budget is read, please, the opposition is asking you to do a proper analysis of this budget statement. Because year after year, you come and you give glowing terms for the past 7 years on this PNM budgets. And we are saying time has to stop and enough is enough. Do your proper analysis. I want to touch a little bit on Paria. I know my colleague MP Indara Singh mentioned it. But today in the Prime Minister's press conference, I heard the Prime Minister saying he's dismissing the fiasco facing the Paria Commission as an administrative matter. Now, these are the words of the Prime Minister. What happened in Paria, it affects not only MP Indara Singh, because I know one of the divers reside in his constituency. One of the divers also resided in my constituency of Pointe-a-Pierre. And the debacle happened at the Pointe-a-Pierre, the Paria waterfront. And we are saying, Prime Minister, the loss of 4 citizens' lives is a national matter. You had a duty as this nation-elected Prime Minister to place public importance on this inquiry. Imagine the Prime Minister saying there's enough people on the government payroll to solve this. Prime Minister, we are saying you are on the payroll of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, yet you solve nothing. This is callousness shown towards the loved ones and memories of our divers who have lost their lives in the Paria tragedy. This week's plea by the Commission of Inquiry Chairman, as MP Indara Singh said, Councillor Jerome Lynch, for resources reflected this government's total lack of care to what happened to these divers and their families from the very start. And the Cabinet should feel ashamed, not only for the disrespect shown by to the loved ones, but what has happened in the past 189 days. This Cabinet, this government, has put a commission of inquiry in place. And we are saying, stand up to the responsibility and show that you care for the people of Trinidad and Tobago by ensuring that our commission of inquiry is done properly, Prime Minister. You owe us that. You owe the families of the divers that. I want to turn a little bit to Nikon. And if I can show a slide of Nikon. Now, MP Indara Singh went into a little bit about Nikon. And Nikon is the old WGTL plant. And MP in Dar Singh, we were shocked when we read in the newspapers yesterday about the restarting of the Nikon plant. And why we say we are shocked? Because as MP in Dar Singh had mentioned, I had asked a question in Parliament to Minister Young on the 8th of April. And MP in Dar Singh had the pleasure of having the question and the response here tonight. I want to read a part of a follow-up question I asked Minister Young to the question about when the Nikon plant would restart. And I want to quote from the Hansard. And I quote myself, Mr. Lee, a follow-up question to the Minister Young. With the findings of the plant, of the disaster, this is Nikon plant, would it be made public? Meaning, would the report of the disaster be made public? And this is Minister Young's response. Madam Speaker, at this stage, I cannot provide a firm response to that. Because, of course, this is a private plant, meaning the Nikon plant, which was our plant, WGTL, that was sold to Nikon, that is operating. But I am sure at the time, when they cross that safety hurdle, the government will be in a position to tell the population some of the findings, etc. But to give a commitment at this stage with a private entity with proprietary information, confidential information, etc., to put that in the public domain, that is not something I'm prepared to commit to. I want to remind Minister Young, the Nikon plant / WGTL plant sits on each and every, on the taxpayer's property called the Petrotrain Refinery compound. We own that compound. We, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, own that compound. And if anything was to happen on that compound, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago has to be responsible and has to be aware of what is transpiring on that compound. And we, as the MP for the Pointe-a-Pierre area, I have a responsibility to my people, my constituents of Batu Avenue, Marabella and environs, just like MP Indara Singh has for Couva South. And we are demanding, before that plant is restarted, that the people and the country is aware of that public report and what took place on that disaster. As MP, as Dr. Munilal reminded us, and always remind me, the owner of that Nikon plant is one Ainsley Gill. And Ainsley Gill was a lobbyist for this government in the United States. And Dr. Munilal at some point in time will talk more about Mr. Gill. So we are demanding that this is not a private plant. This is not a private plant, this is private property. We, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, own that property and we demand information of what took place. And we must stand up for the people of Batu Avenue and Marabella who have been calling on over the last few months on what took place and what took place in that disaster. And they did not have the Nikon executive management, today, did not have the courtesy to reach out to the people of Batu Avenue and environs, or even the MP for Pointe-a-Pierre. And I wonder why. I wonder why. As I always like to say that UNC has a plan. And if our leader was here tonight, she would mention some of our plans. And I just want to remind the population here tonight that under Kamla Persad-Bissessar, we had a transformation plan. And we had 12 projects that we would like to embark on if we were in government. And I would like to remind the viewers here tonight, we had great plans. And one of those plans to create jobs is the Brechin Castle Agro-Processing Complex. We also had plans for the St. Madeleine Manufacturing Facility. We had the East-West Biotechnology Manufacturing Corridor, the Sevilla Digital Innovation Park, the Tamana Solar Park, the West Port of Spain Trinidad Creative Arts Area, East Port of Spain Steel Pan Manufacturing Facility, the Paria Airport Aircraft Maintenance Repair and Operation Hub, Cedra Special Economic Zone, Point Galeota Energy Hub, the Plymouth International Cruise Ship Marina Complex in Tobago, and Tobago's first local branded hotel. So we had projects. And as Deputy John always say, election has consequences. So this country would have been in a better place today if Kamla Persad-Bissessar would have been Prime Minister again. So as I come to a close, I know we had a long night. Today we had the opening of Parliament for the third session and 12th Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. And on behalf of our parliamentary colleagues, the opposition, I say we continue our pledge to the people of this nation to be their voices, their defenders, and their fighters in the legislature. As a team, our focus is to fight to protect the citizens from a never-seen-before unparalleled cost of living crisis and the total decay of good governance in this country. 2 years ago, when this government took office for a second term at the height of the COVID pandemic, they promised legislation that would ensure proper recovery of this nation. In the last 2 years, besides some pie-in-the-sky fairy tale mid-year reviews and budgets, they have offered zero benefits to the people of this nation. This government has not brought a single piece of legislation to create jobs, growth, or prosperity. The reality is that their legislative agenda by this government has failed and betrayed the people of this nation. We have not seen a single constitutionally upstanding law which would protect citizens from crime. We have not seen a single piece of legislation that would benefit young people, protect women, generate equality, and improve opportunity for our citizens. What is even worse, this government has used its legislative agenda to suppress us as citizens. We have seen them suppress public accountability by gutting and delaying the procurement legislation. We have seen them suppress prosperity with property tax. As an opposition, our duty is to the people of this nation, their welfare, their livelihood, and the Constitution. You will recall in 2021, we brought motions of no confidence against the Minister of National Security, the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Energy, and the Minister of Health. It was the first time in our Parliament's history that a government refused to vote to offer confidence in their own senior cabinet ministers. Those motions remained alive to the end of this respective session. Today, I want to say on behalf of the opposition, expect more motions of no confidence. As you know, the budget is a mere 2 weeks away. And as a parliament, there's nothing much to expect from the government except fairy tales. As a matter of fact, the Minister of Finance shouldn't waste our time with any long statements, because only 2 weeks ago, the CSO and the Central Bank Bulletin this week rubbished his statements at the spotlight on the economy. So this government has announced nothing to offer the people of our nation. The UNC, on the other hand, will be delivering by Kamla Persad-Bissessar a comprehensive plan, analysis and response to this government's economic turmoil, which they have bestowed on our citizens. We are more in touch with our citizens, as recently we have been having a line of successful budget consultations which have been put together, significant ideas to bring to our parliament as the people's government of this country. So as we begin the third session of the 12th Parliament, we give the country the commitment, while this government, by their actions or lack thereof, have abdicated their responsibilities and abandoned the people of this nation, we in the opposition will be your voices, your eyes and ears, and will fight for your ambitions, goals, and way of life in the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago with our leader, the Honourable Kamla Persad-Bissessar. As I close, I just have some house duties, some reminders by our GenSec that tomorrow night we have another pre-budget consultation, and that will be held a combination of Paria and Pointe-a-Pierre pre-budget consultation at the Akbar Trace Community Center. Peter, what time is it start? 7 p.m. And on Thursday this week, at the Malabar Community Center, another pre-budget consultation at 7 p.m. So as I close, I say thank you. Long live our leader, the Honourable Kamala Prasad Bisesa, and long live United National Congress, our great party. I thank you.
So who feel the black? Who feel the white? I don't know. But it's settled tomorrow night. Who feel the wrong? Who feel the right? Come and go. And all who feel the too bright, let me jump up, let me wind up, party non-stop. Ramage Dingule Kelkete, we come to play mass. Every creed and class, don't let nothing pass. Like a ready TV, all the love inside away. Uptown and ghetto, feeling the tempo. Soca and Kaiso, it's party day like so. Soon as we land, fun is the plan. We like to jam, like the man bam. Waving we hand inside the band, we inside the band. And if you cut me, you go see blood.